Charlotte Triplett. Welcome to our informational webinar about Realize Accelerator. So today we are going to talk a little bit more about this new accelerator. I'm going to share a little bit more about University Lab Partners. So as I mentioned, I'm Charlotte Triplett. My role here at University Lab Partners is I'm the Director of Venture Accelerations. I'm also a founding partner advisor at Suncoast Ventures and have worked in advising startups for the last 7 years. And I have a background trained as a scientist and engineer, but I also really have been helping startups around business strategy. And as an investor, one of the things that I've seen is the places where startups all fail in their pitches and in putting their businesses together. And that's the impetus for Realize, is sort of helping startups with those areas that seem to be commonly issues for startups. So just a little bit about University Lab Partners. So we are a life sciences incubator. We do have 2 facilities here in Orange County. We have over 5,000 square foot of laboratory and office space and $3 million in scientific equipment and resources. We have 3 main areas that we work on within University Lab Partners. As I mentioned, our incubator, where startups can come and rent as small of a space as a lab bench, or they can have a lab suite. We do have not just startups, but we also have hospital innovation groups working here. We have some corporate innovation groups working here. So it's a great place and environment for startups in that way. We do have our accelerator program we're going to talk about today, but we also have our iCreate accelerator, which is focused on medical countermeasures and med device and diagnostics. We are currently running a cohort of that accelerator. It's a lot like a venture studio where you get surrounded by technical and business support. It's a little bit different than the accelerator program I'm going to talk about today. And that probably will have another announcement for call for applications within the next couple of months. But we do have rolling applications for non-dilutive funding as a part of that program. So if you want to go to our website and check that out. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we have a tremendous workforce development program where we have high school students almost every single day, every single evening in our facilities learning about life sciences skill sets. And so it's a great opportunity for them to decide if this is a career path that they want to take. And we also offer different kinds of training for professionals as well in different kinds of equipment and techniques. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Realize Accelerator and who should apply, who's qualified. So the first requirement is that you are SoCal based. And in that case, what that really means is you need to have at least 1 team member located here in Southern California. And the 10 counties I'll talk about in a moment. But so you don't have to have your whole team here. Your company doesn't have to be headquartered here. We really want to encourage people that have presence in Southern California to apply. You should be probably pre-seed or seed stage. You could be Series A or looking to raise your Series A, but I think anybody beyond the Series A probably is past this accelerator. So the sweet spot is more in that pre-seed to sort of Series A space. You need to have at least 1 full-time member of your team. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO. Could be, doesn't have to be paid. We're very flexible, but we want to know that you're a real company and that somebody is committed full time to this entity, and that's one of our requirements. I think it goes without saying that you should be solving an unmet need. I know this is like easier said than done sometimes, but we really want to make sure that you have an understanding of the problem that you're solving, and that you're not trying to seek a technology seeking the problem that you're solving. And that's important for this program. Last but not least, you should be ready to move your company forward and commit to the time commitment. It is just, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. We don't have investment funding, but we do have a lot of other amazing things that will support you. So we have expert mentors, and I'll share some of those later on in this discussion. We definitely have sort of tailored or guidance that can be specific to you and your startup. And so it's not just a sort of a blanket discussion of the things that startups should do. We also have investor insights. So, myself as an investor, as well as other investors that are contributing as experts to the program, can help you really understand how investors think, what they're looking for, and how to tailor that, not just your pitch, but your go-to-market strategy, et cetera, to what investors think is important. We are not taking any equity, and we do have a pitch competition at the end where you can win a lab bench, free lab space, and or uh, in-kind resources from our partners. And so we're really excited about that. And most importantly, there's going to be a bunch of investors at that event. It will be live and in person. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So as I mentioned, you should have at least one team member in one of these counties listed here. It's basically the whole bottom half of California. We're really thrilled. I think this is one of the first, or if not the only one, that accelerator that is focused in a hybrid way of being in Southern California, and we're really thrilled for that. As I mentioned, one full-time person in the company. You need to commit to at least 6 hours a week of touch time with the accelerator. Now, we understand humans, vacations planned, et cetera. So if you were miss maybe one or two sessions, that's not the end of the world. Hopefully you could send a team member or you could watch the recordings, but we want to make sure it's not, it's not a repeat thing. You need to have majority commitment time. So it will be Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time. You do need to be incorporated. So you do need to be a company. And if you're not a C Corp, you need to become one. We don't expect you to become one, before you get accepted or enter into the accelerator. But if you're really serious about seeking outside capital, this is a step that you're going to have to take anyway. And so we would want you to be willing to convert into a C Corp or commit to that. You should also have your IP licensed, or you should have a term sheet in hand. So if any of you have negotiated university, especially licensing in the past, it can take anywhere from, if you're lucky and it's quick, it's a 3-month process. If you're not, it could be, a 12-month process. And so what we want is to know that you have the ability to pull the trigger on being able to in-license your technology, and that you have negotiated and worked through that process. And then lastly, you should be in a venture scalable market. So oftentimes there are startups, especially in the healthcare space, that have a niche component. Maybe it's not a big enough market to be venture scalable. It's perfectly angel investable, and even returns for angel if they can get across the line and get an exit quickly enough. But it just doesn't fit the venture model. So that you should be in a big enough market that it is attractive for attracting venture investment. And don't be shy. Feel free to pipe up and ask questions. We're such a small group today. Everyone just see, you can raise your hand, you can unmute and just ask me a question. We're not being formal here. So we are kicking off in person. So as I mentioned, this is a hybrid program, but I think it's hopefully going to be the best kind of hybrid, since we know driving from anywhere in Southern California to anywhere else is never a fun adventure, can be lots of traffic. We are going to kick off in person with a 6-hour event. It's going to be a lot of getting to know the fellow cohort members, understanding the program. We're going to have a panel of investors and a panel of exited founders to speak to the participants that day. And then our demo day is scheduled for September 17th. It will be in person. As I mentioned, you're going to be competing for lab bench space and in-kind prizes. And there will be investors present for that event. I'm really excited about that. And we are going to do 2 pitch practices prior to this investor demo day. One will be online and one will be in person. So there'll be 3 touch points in person for the accelerator. The rest of the programming, the bulk of the programming, will happen online. So it'll be much easier for people to participate from all the counties included in our accelerator reach. So, I want to talk a little bit about the curriculum and how that flow of the time will work in the accelerator, and just talking to you from my experience. So, I did run three cohorts of an accelerator in the past, and in that accelerator, we actually were investing, and we did 31 investments in 18 months. So, I learned a lot from running that process, and I also learned a lot of feedback from the startups about what they cared about, what they didn't care about, what was helpful, what worked, where folks were at. And so this program has been completely designed around that. And it's really focused on sort of everything that you need to create for your business that investors want to see, that makes them believe that you not just have a product or an idea or a technology, but that you have built a business around your startup. And so starting, of course, with customer discovery and market fit. This is something that a lot of times people do early on in their startup phase, and then they think they're done, which to me is always really interesting, because I would say this is something that you're sort of never done with, in terms of being able to reach and touch the customer and really understand what their problems are, what their needs are, and really having an understanding of that. And we'll dive from that week. And that week, I'm super excited. We have one of the top folks that I've ever worked with that is a qualitative researcher that's going to talk to you about how do you do customer discovery. If you've never been trained in it before, it's really easy to go out and say, "Hi, do you like my idea?" And that's what I see a lot of startups doing. And that's really probably not the best way to get true understanding of what's going on in the space. And she's done this across the board in large companies and with startups in the past. And she's really amazing at getting down to the nitty-gritty of what people are actually thinking and helping you understand how to do that too. And so the next week, we're going to be doing competitive analysis and market research. So when you think about competitive analysis, sometimes this includes, for example, IP and looking at whether you have freedom to operate, can also include understanding who are the big players in your field, understanding who the startups are that might be out there that are competitive with you. I think that's one of the biggest gaps that I see startups when they come and pitch. They're like, "We're the only ones doing this." And I say, "Oh, because I've seen for other startups in the last 6 months doing exactly the same thing." And so really understanding how you fit in that and how you do your market research. And then sometimes your competition is they're doing nothing right now. And some people think, well, that's great because I'm doing something. And I would say maybe, but it's also possible that they're doing nothing for a reason and there's not a burning desire to do the thing that you're doing. And so looking at all that, we're going to dive into healthcare economics and market access. Often people think I have a CPT code, I'm good. This could not be further from the truth. And so we have experts that are going to come in and really help you understand what this means, what the steps are. And if you're early on in the product development process and you're working through uh, understanding your healthcare economics story, also how you can do incremental evidence planning. So in the healthcare space, it's not enough to sort of get FDA approval and even get reimbursement status. You also have to get clinical adoption. And sometimes that takes a whole bunch more evidence than what it takes to get FDA approval. And so thinking about how you might be able to plan and double up during some of the times and things that you're doing in projects. And so we have a great group of folks that are experts in that area. We're going to do financial planning and forecasting. This is not my forte. I am not great at making a pro forma, but I know people who can teach you how to do this. And I know how to look at a pro forma and tell whether it's realistic, unrealistic, makes sense. That's my side of the house. But we have folks that are going to come in and talk to you about financial planning and forecasting. I see a lot of startups raising money, and I look at them and shake my head and think, you need a lot more money than what you think that you do to get from where you think you're going to the other place that you're going. And so one of the things that we're going to be discussing is, how do you sort of make those gauges, make sure that you're forecasting your burn rate, thinking about like what does that look like, and then building in the squish area around that to make sure that you don't run out of money. Everyone knows that it's very hard to raise money when you're almost out of money. It should be the opposite of that, but that's the way that it works. And so making sure that you're accurately forecasting and both your own startups needs financially, as well as being able to financially plan what your revenue looks like and over time to be able to tell that to investors. The next week, we're going to go into go-to-market strategy and business model. So there's so many different ways in which you can go to market. And, sometimes in the healthcare space, you can even go to market direct to consumer first and get some traction there before you start gaining more traction within health systems. An example, we just had an event this week here at University Lab Partners in partnership with the Device Alliance. The founder that was on that panel has a medical device that measures biomarkers in breath and it has been being used for weight management. And her first customer was Bank of America. Now she has hospitals on board. Now she has payers on board. And so she really went out and got traction within like the employer market, and then moved into the healthcare market. So there's so many different mechanisms of going to market. And it's also true that your business model matters. For example, do you have a razor blade model? Are you leasing your capital equipment? Are you, do they need to buy it, et cetera? Also uh, in terms of that. And so we'll be diving into that. Brand and storytelling is something that is essential for early stage startups, including personal brand and being able to create credibility and reputation as a founder. And so we are going to go into that week. Fundraising essentials and building investor relationships. We're going to talk about what investors really care about. We're going to talk about how early do you go and talk to these people. I'm super excited to say we're building relationships also with corporate venture and corporate M&A groups, and they're going to be able to answer questions about like, when do you approach us? How do you approach us, et cetera. And so some of those things are like really critical for startups to have an understanding of. Scaling operations and building your team. I find this is the one that gets overlooked probably the most. I get questions like, when do I bring on advisors? When do I bring on a board? When do I bring on a board? Should I pay somebody a 1099? Should I actually bite the bullet and start hiring employees? Who gets equity and who doesn't get equity? And then, does it look bad if I'm a solo founder? Does it look bad if I don't have other management teams? All of these questions are valid questions. And we're going to talk more also about the challenges that happen from being an early stage founder to moving into operationalizing and selling, and actually, moving into that next stage of the startup. It's one of the most critical times. It's also one of the times that startups often fail because it's a very difficult transition period for startups in the healthcare space. We're going to speak to KOL and advisory board building. Again, when, how, who, how do I go out and find those people and get them on board with what I'm doing? How do I talk to that MD that thinks they deserve 5% of my company for, seeing me once every 3 months, like talking to me for an hour once every 3 months, all of those types of things. And then lastly, closing deals and negotiating terms. And this is not just on a term sheet or investor side, but it's also on the sales side. So what happens when you actually have a hospital that says, yes, we want to bring on your technology, and you've never negotiated anything like that in your life? How do you make sure that you are understanding, all of the variables? And we have amazing sales folks and as well as investors to help you talk through some of that. So any questions about the curriculum? Oh, I know one thing I wanted to mention. So the way that the program will be working is that on Tuesdays, we have an expert that's giving an hours-long workshop on the topic. Sometimes it's two experts because there's maybe a little bit different angles. So we'll have a couple of folks presenting, and then we'll be assigning your homework in that second hour. So we'll be having a broader discussion about this is the piece of this part of this thing that we're talking about this week that we would like you to do. And obviously, there's going to be more optional homework, resources, etc., available for that topic. It's not just what we're doing within the class. So it's up to you to take advantage of that, but we will be assigning homework. On Wednesday, we have a 2-hour session with a bunch of different experts that have different perspectives on these things. And you get to ask specific questions about your startup and have a dialogue with those folks, which is I'm so excited about. We have everybody from, and I'll walk through the mentors, and some of the mentors that have just come on are just signed on a head of data science for Providence. So somebody who has an understanding of like adoption of technologies, the issues that are related to like actually coming on board and getting integrated into a hospital system, et cetera. But we also have, investors, we have regulatory experts, we have, everything along those lines. And so you're able to ask your questions that you'd like to ask. As for example, go-to-market strategy also has a regulatory component to it, right? Just like competitive analysis has an IP component to it, there's a lot to these topics. So on Wednesdays is your free-for-all day. You get to meet these entire group of experts that are for that week. Some of our experts will be repeating weeks because they have different kinds of expertise to offer for different weeks. And then on Fridays, you present your homework and get expert feedback again. So it's a chance to get sort of insight and feedback from the folks there. And then we rinse and repeat. So we do that every week for 10 weeks. And that is the way that the accelerator will run. And so my guess is that it will be about 8 hours a week of commitment. So 6 hours of touch time and 2 hours of working on the homework is our goal. So we don't want to overburden you. We know you're running companies. And we're also not giving you busy work. So if we assign homework and you already have it done and you've already done this for your startup, guess what? You are home free. You get to present it and not have to do that homework. But these are very essential things that you need to do regardless of whether we're assigning them or not. And so I want to walk through some of the mentors that we have and just kind of share with you the level of folks that we have. So if you're from Orange County, you may recognize Susan. She was actually one of my former clients at Edwards. She led a big marketing group there. And she is a brand and marketing strategy, especially in healthcare. Greg Cogswell is the former head of global market access for Dexcom, and he's also held similar roles at Medtronic and other medical device companies. Amazing understanding of what it actually takes to get. He will be one of our curriculum developers for market access and healthcare economics. And Kristen Meidel is a regulatory expert, runs a consulting firm. They do have some presence here in Southern California, but they're global. So they're based in Portland, but Kristen is amazing. And she is actually one of the few regulatory people that I've met that actually take into consideration market access and reimbursement in the process of regulatory and really helps understand that whole picture and how regulatory interacts with that. Aaron Call is a tremendous market researcher and go-to-market strategy person. So he's been running a firm doing that for at least 15 years and has a background not just in medical device and diagnostics, but also in digital health. So it's a great asset to the program. Reggie Dobson did so many years of medical device selling and was a distributor himself, and then has been also an administrator in a hospital system, was head of procurement in a procurement role at Edwards Life Sciences, and now leads a financial group at Synchrony, where he goes in and helps hospital systems understand how to afford to buy things long term. So he's like a great person to understand like the mind of the hospital CFO. How do you really get sort of into that group? If you're from Orange County, you may also recognize JJ Risha. JJ is not a healthcare expert, but sometimes I think that's actually really beneficial because if you're pitching something and you and the non-healthcare expert can't get it, that's a problem. And so he'll be there helping with like term sheet negotiation and other things as far as the curriculum is concerned. So these mentors are folks that I have worked with over the years. So AJ, he is the president of the Mullings Group for APAC, but he has been in progressive roles in sales and medical device, and now he does recruiting, and he works with a lot of startups as they're trying to either recruit in strategic hires at different stages, or and does also consulting with and so I think he will add a whole flavor as it relates to both staffing as well as sales. So like top global sales leader in med device and diagnostics, has worked for Danaher, Össur, Medtronic, is just and Lilly actually at one point in time in his career. So he's really had a breadth of experience there. Steven Skleru is a data science expert and runs a boutique firm that has done things like partner with Microsoft on developing a technology for preventing central line infections in hospitals. So if you think about AI and ML and how it's integrated both into medical devices or could be used in digital health solutions, they've done commercial technology and actually brought things to market and understand the challenges as it relates to data security, privacy, et cetera. So he is an amazing person to be a mentor for this program. Carla Pagato is another market access expert. She's actually an expert in figuring out how do you get those societies and those patient advocacy groups on your side, which is tremendous skill set. She's worked for a number of large organizations but has also worked with a ton of startups and is a fantastic mentor and advisor. Leah Davidson is the CEO of Because Human. She has worked for Amazon, Starbucks, helped create a new Leatherman tool based on market research so she is the customer discovery market research guru expert that's going to help us guide and understand how to do it on a budget and also in a way in which you can get the right information. Susie Ingwall has tremendous background working with startups in health tech and also has a ton of connections and understanding from investors. So she works with family offices, she works with clinicians, and is going to be a big part of the program. Sean Yee is a colleague of mine from Providence. I mentioned that we have a data science expert from Providence. We also have the person that helps support the clinical trials for the 52 hospital system of Providence in 7 states. And so Sean also leads their AI accelerator program. And so he's going to be a fantastic support for this program. Let's see. I don't know why it's not moving. I will do this. So next phase of mentors, you might recognize some familiar faces down on the bottom row. These are some of our ULP experts that have but I'm going to talk about the top row first. So Heather Lover is so I met Heather back when I was running another accelerator, and she was a chief marketing officer for one of the companies that was in our accelerator. And I was so impressed. A lot of our startups started upskilling their presentations, and I found out that they were working with Heather behind the scenes as well. She's gone on to become a startup founder, and she has an AI-focused company that can help you stand up an initial brand. And she's helped underrepresented founders, and I forget how many millions of dollars they've raised based on her support and expertise. So she's tremendous at brand and storytelling, and she's going to be leading that week, as well as I think we're going to be negotiating some kind of a discount for her brand software, which is already very reasonable and so cool. I've demoed it and it is pretty impressive. So it allows you to kind of enter in your things that you want people to believe about your company, and they can generate template decks for you as well as logos and other things. And so it's really a fascinating. It's actually such a needed thing for early stage startups. Nobody wants to spend a lot of money on brand at this stage. Mike Payne is a colleague of mine from Portland, but that is originally from the Bay Area. He has been one of the first employees at companies like Virta Health and Omada, so really a strong digital health expert, just tremendous from the digital health side. Anthony Lee leads a $100 million a year product development firm in the Bay Area. They work in defense and in med device. And some of the biggest exits that have happened in med device in the last year have been projects that he's worked on. He's not allowed to talk about it, but he's the one that's No worries, Greg. Thank you. I hope you will apply and also be a mentor. I don't even know what to say to you because Greg is like has both hats, right? Like he's a ULP resident. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, absolutely. And so Sandy Miller, who is our executive director here at ULP, she's the original co-founder of Stanford Biodesign, has a tremendous amount of experience running global accelerators. We're thrilled to have her as a mentor. Of course, myself, I've spoken about. Stephanie Chan, who runs our other accelerator program, is a diagnostics expert and is a tremendous value to this, especially in the diagnostics line. And this is not even all of the mentors. I'm just putting the mentors on here that I had put together. So our partner here in human resources here at ULP is actually going to be a part of the team when we're talking about scaling operations. She's a human resources expert. She's worked in life sciences companies, all in lots of different stages, from the very early stages until scaling. Dan Sands, fantastic person who's going to help us with all of the financial forecasting and modeling expertise. So he has that background and has worked in a number of different with a number of different medical device startups, as well as he has like a bench of like 300 experts sort of in his back pocket that he can bring to the table as well. So if we have needs for other kinds of expertise, Elise Hub is a startup founder and also a health tech investor. She has a lot of operations background, and we're really excited to have her on board for those and also go to market strategy. So she'll be participating in that. Jen Young is the former CRO at Bodyport. She has a lot of experience in commercialization. She also is a payer expert and really has an understanding of those areas. Raj Nahani is an MD exited founder who does a lot of early stage innovation work, mentorship in the community here in Orange County, and is a tremendous benefit to the program. We have other MDs as well that will be participating. And then Hal Walbrink has brought over 100, worked on over 100 medical device products that have come to market. He's a product development engineer here in Orange County that will be a part of the program. So these are just a flavor of the level and the type of mentors that will be available to you as a part of the program. And I know Michael, I don't know Jade, so I don't know if you have any questions for me on the program, but would be happy to open it up to answer any questions you might have. I know we're sort of at the end of time, but Jade,
Great.
did you have?
Thank you. Yeah, I had a question. With respect to, I guess, the qualifications of startups that you're looking in this case,
Yeah,
because I have a startup in this case that's founded by two faculty members at Cal State Long Beach
yeah.
and a team of three students. Well, I mean, one that's already graduated, so
Okay.
so she can count as full time, I guess, in this
Okay.
case,
Yeah.
and can
Yeah. If she's
devote the
full-time
time for
working
that.
on the startup, they don't have to be paid. We're not expecting that they're necessarily paid. That's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
and they've gone through the regional I-Corps at UC Irvine, actually.
Okay.
So they
Okay.
did, I guess, some of the customer discovery upfront, since you're only covering it for a week. And so in this case,
Yeah, it's not. So this is a program that I would say, is a post I-Corps. I think the biggest thing for us is that they don't have to be super far along in the startup, but they do have to have, as I mentioned, they need to be, committed to the startup. This isn't just a science project, right? Like this is like the next level and they're ready to move forward. And so, do they have a working prototype? I'm not sure what type of
yes,
startup it
yes.
is. Yeah.
So they do have a working prototype. They could demo it. They've
Okay.
already got an issue patent for that.
Okay. So if they
So
have a patent, if they've got, those are all beneficial things. They obviously have somebody working full-timer that's committed, that's ready to take it to the next level. Have they raised any outside funds, or has it been all non-dilutive funding to date? Do you
So
know?
so far it's they haven't raised, I think, successfully outside funding such as SBIR, STTR, or I think pre-seed, etc. So that's why I wasn't sure if that was an
Yeah, I mean, if they have a working prototype, even if they haven't raised outside funding, that's not a disqualifier. I think it's more a matter of, what we're looking for is the quality in the founders that they're committed to this, that they want to learn and move it forward. There's a little bit of a gray area when you're talking about university spinouts because sometimes they're still very uh, not quite at that stage. Our bigger concern not is like whether they raised outside money, it's more, are they solving a problem? And did they choose to solve a problem versus, hey, I got this cool tech and now I'm trying to figure out where I can apply this cool tech, which is, for us, I think that would be the biggest differentiator. Whereas I think iCore sometimes helps them understand and pivot and realize where their tech is most needed, right? And we don't expect that they may not pivot even as a part of our program. We just want them to have some sense of like the problem that they're solving. And like I said, some, working prototype, they already have a patent. Have they in-licensed the IP to the company? Have they formed a company? Do you know those
So I
questions?
believe they formed a company, but we haven't completed the license agreement. But it's pretty much a given that they'll have access to the
Okay.
the
Yeah.
technology.
So
So
I would encourage them to apply. And basically, what we do is we have a conversation with them and determine, whether they're a fit and it's a good timing for them to come in. We will be running this program again. Um, the next time around, it will be more biotech and therapeutics focused. So this one is med device diagnostics and digital health.
oh, so you're rotating the theme in that
We're
situation.
rotating the
Okay.
same program, but a different topic because, as you probably know, those are much more difficult to like. You can't really mix those two together. It's
Right.
different
Yeah,
experts.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
different
yeah. No, I understand that.
market.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But just also then the follow-up question is how does this differentiate, for example, from iCreate? So because that's the other accelerator
iCreate
program.
is very much an earlier program. It's a little bit more like we have some companies that are just barely companies that are, it's also true that iCreate has a very specific focus and topic. It needs to be a fit for medical countermeasures, whereas we don't care what problem you're solving here. iCreate is for that.
Okay. So that one has a much more restrictive theme and it's just more
And I think the
exploratory for
difference as
technology.
well is that accelerator is more like a venture studio, and it is uh where we help them more with both technology and the business side of things. Whereas this accelerator, we're hoping you have your technology side handled, or at least you've got some decent, like that you don't need as much like product development support, or this is really, as you saw with the curriculum, it's much more focused on that. Yeah.